Hi, this is Sandy, or as you know me, Cheslea from Daywalker Customs Embroidery, and I'm here to do a tutorial video on Embroidery Library's Butterfly Purse and the Hoop. This is a really neat design. I've made it a couple of times now. As you can see, this is the picture, and at the top of my screen you can see Embroidery Library's web address, www.emblibrary.com. They've got some great stuff out there. So with that said, let's get started. When you download the instructions for this purse from Embroidery Library, it does come with a set of supplies. But this is my own list. I did change up a couple of things. The vinyl or faux leather, the cotton fabric for the lining, your water-soluble stabilizer instead of tearaway. That's the one difference. Two D-rings, temporary spray adhesive, some tape. You can either use painter's tape or regular tape like I have. The color change sheet. Your die line printouts, you'll need to print those out and cut those out. And the embroidery designs themselves, there are two, an A and a B. And then scissors, rotary cutter, your sewing machine, threads, etc. So the first thing we're going to do is cut our straps. And if you've got the large size of the design like I do, you're going to cut them at 1¼ inches. You're going to want your straps to be about 50 inches long each. So once you cut them, you should have two straps with that length and about a 1¼ inch wide. If you need to add length to them, you can always add length by cutting more and then just sewing the two ends together to give you more length. But 50 inches, 45 to 50 inches is about right for the straps that I've been using. I use my walking foot on my regular sewing machine when I'm stitching down these two strap pieces together. It seems to walk it through much better and easier. It doesn't, especially with the vinyl, it can get a little grippy when you're trying to put it through the sewing machine. So that seems to work out really well for me. I don't spray my two pieces of the straps together. I like to just hold them and make sure that they go through the machine evenly as I'm feeding them through. The first side is a little more difficult. The second side gets easier. And then this is the decorative stitch. I just did a regular blanket stitch on mine on both sides to kind of give it kind of more of a feel rather than a straight line on my particular straps. Now it's time to work with our printouts from the die lines. One of the bigger ones actually comes in two pieces, and you need to make sure that you line it up very carefully along the numbers and the line in the middle, and then tape it before you cut it out. The other one you just can cut out, and then there's one for the little straps that go on as well. So once you have those all cut out, this is what they look like, and you'll have three pieces. You'll need to cut two pieces of the little square one, rectangle one, and one piece of each of the others. So first we're going to cut the ones for the vinyl. So I've used 505 spray and I've sprayed this down on the back side of the vinyl. So then I'm going to gently cut out all around the shapes. I'll cut two of the rectangle and then one of each of the others. Once I've done that, then I'm going to do the same thing with my lining fabric, but I will only need the two pieces you see here. And cut them carefully because you'll want to make sure that it lines up. As you'll see later in my project, I was a little off, and I'll show you what can happen when that happens. So here are my pieces all cut, and you can see that I've got the pieces for the lining, the pieces for the faux leather, and the pieces for the small strap. Take the pieces that you cut for the small straps and thread them through your D-rings, and then you're just going to set these aside because they'll be used later in the when we attach them to the purse. Now we're going to talk about why I use water-soluble stabilizer instead of the tearaway that they recommend. First of all, I made a couple of purses with the tearaway, and when I got done, I could see the white edges along where I couldn't trim, because if I got too close, I would trim the threads and that were along the edge. And so I thought about how I could change that or do that differently, and I came up with the water soluble. It's not a new idea. I'm sure lots of people have had it. But I use 2 layers of water soluble so that I can get my edge to be clean without having the stabilizer showing through. Now, another alternative you could have is you could take a Sharpie, a black Sharpie, and go along the edge of your stabilizer around the edge. I did that on a fob once, and it finishes it off just fine too. So it's really your choice, but I do use the water soluble here. Color 1 is going to stitch out the die line for this back piece, and you should be using the design A in this case. So once this stitches out, you're going to stop your machine and you're going to attach the vinyl piece that matches it using 505 spray and sticking it down onto the stabilizer. You'll then take it to your machine, put it back in, and the next stitch that it does will be a tack down stitch that will go all the way around. Once it's done with the tack down stitch, you're going to take it out of the machine again and turn it over, and this is where you're going to attach your lining fabric. Using a 505 spray, you're going to want to spray that piece and put it on those lines on the back of your stabilizer, following the guidelines that are there. At this point, you're also going to want to change your bobbin thread to be the black bobbin thread if you don't already have black bobbin thread in your machine. That's for the finishing touches that are going to happen when it does the next stitch down, because it will go around and then do that stitch down on that kind of flat straight edge, and you're going to want to make sure you have the right color bobbin in there. Next, go ahead once it's done and trim around fairly close, but not too close to the edge of the piece. You're cutting away the excess water soluble at this point, and then you're going to take it to your sink and you're actually going to soak it in some water. And what I do is I kind of just rub my fingers together along the edge as I go around the edge of it to kind of make that water soluble kind of come loose, and kind of evaporate or disintegrate in the water. And so I do that all the way around, and then I bring it out, and of course the die line will probably come off. That's normal. And then I make sure I towel dry it pretty good. I might trim a little bit of the fray from the fabric, but be very careful not to trim where the finishing stitches are. Now it's time to hoop 2 more layers of water-soluble stabilizer in your hoop and get ready with the bee design for this purse. You can also change your bobbin thread back to your regular bobbin thread if you want. I have a black bobbin thread, so I just leave mine in at this point. So then we're going to take our 505 spray. After this die line stitches out, we're going to take our 505 spray and we're going to put our vinyl onto that die line, matching it up as closely as possible. You want to be as close as you can, and I'll show you what happens later when it doesn't work out that way. Then it's going to go into the machine to stitch out, and it'll go all the way up to where it's prompting us to put on the small straps. At that point, we've got little guidelines to be able to put our straps on. You want to face it toward the butterfly, your D-rings, and then you want to very carefully place those within the guides and then tape them down really good. You don't want them getting caught in your machine, and you don't want to have the D-rings break a needle. So tape them down really good. You can use painter's tape or you can use regular tape like I have. For some reason, my painter's tape doesn't seem to stick very well. You're going to put it back in the machine and allow it to stitch down the tack down for these small straps. And then you're going to have to get the tape out of it. I have a little bit of trouble sometimes getting the tape out, but if I use my seam ripper to kind of lift the edge of that tape and then use my tweezers to kind of pull it off, it's better than ripping out an embroidery design, but it's also can be a little tedious, but you can get it out there. Just be careful not to snag the faux leather or the vinyl in the process. I actually leave a piece holding the D-rings down. It's easy enough to get that off later, but I don't want anything happening at my machine that it catches those. Then turn it over, and this is where you're going to attach your lining and your other piece that we finished earlier. This is also where you want to change your bobbin thread back to black if you haven't already, because these final pieces that it's going to stitch down will show, and they're going to want you to have the correct bobbin thread. So first you're going to lay down the actual lining piece over the top, use 505 spray and get that into place. Next, you're going to want to lay the piece that we finished earlier across the bottom or the purse part of this. So make sure, like right now, you see the fabric for my butterflies. That's actually the part where the butterfly design is on the other side, and that's the flap. So I want to make sure to spray around the edge and then just add this other piece to be able to stitch down. I put it back in the machine, and then it did a stitch down all the way around just to tack everything down. And then I take it and put it back in the machine again, and it's going to do the final stitching all the way around. This is where you can see that the stitching is actually beyond that vinyl. And this happened, I think, because I kind of pushed on the stabilizer when I was trying to put those two pieces on. And then this is what it looked like with the vinyl after it's stitched out, is kind of puckery. So it had actually moved the vinyl based on the stabilizer pressure that I had put on. And so then my edge didn't come out right. So then my stitching, my final stitching all the way around on parts of it, it wasn't on the whole thing, but on the back portion in particular, where the stitches are actually beyond the edge of that vinyl. So I'm going to end up with like little hairy edges on my purse. Now I'm going to cut this piece out from the stabilizer, and I'm going to cut around the edge like I did with the other piece, not too close to trim any of those finishing strings. And you can see the purse is finished here, and you can see the water soluble stabilizer, and we'll take care of that in a minute. But the next thing that we want to do is we want to attach our straps. So we're going to attach one strap and pin it, and then we're going to put it on our bodies and kind of make sure the strap is going the right way and it's not twisted and the right length. And then we're going to, once we determine the length, then we're going to actually cut that, and we're going to take it to the machine and sew the two pieces of the strap down. As you can see, I've got a cross here. Then the only thing left is to take it and to the sink and get the water soluble off, and then hang it to dry here. I encourage you to hang it with something inside so air can breathe in there. It did take a day or two for mine to dry out completely. And that is the finishing of Embroidery Library's Butterfly Purse and a Hoop. And I appreciate you joining me, and I hope that you've found this video helpful. I'm including my website here at the bottom, daywalkercustoms.com, and I appreciate that you have taken the time to watch my video, and that the admin for fans of Embroidery Library allowed me to share this with you. So I hope you guys have a great day, and thanks for coming.